Most AI startups are about to run into lawsuits over their data, lest they use this. Right now, there's a ticking time bomb in the AI industry that most entrepreneurs aren't even aware of. Lawsuits are piling up. The New York Times versus OpenAI, Getty Images versus Stability AI, authors, artists, and publishers are lawyering up. And the question at the center of all these battles is simple. Whose data are you allowed to use to train your AI? If you're building an AI product right now, this should terrify you. Because one lawsuit could wipe out your entire business before it even gets off the ground. But here's what the smartest companies already know. There's a way to train powerful AI models without touching anyone's copyrighted content, without violating privacy laws, and without exposing yourself to legal risk. It's called synthetic data. It might be the most important concept in AI that nobody's talking about. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what synthetic data is, how it works, when it's legal, when it's risky, and most importantly, how you can use it to build AI products without waking up to a cease and desist letter. Because the companies that figure this out now will have a massive advantage over everyone else scrambling to clean up their legal mess later. Let's dive in. First, let's talk about why this matters right now more than ever before. Here's the problem. AI models need data, lots of it. If you want to train a model to recognize medical images, you need thousands or millions of labeled medical scans. If you want to build an AI that understands financial documents, you need massive amounts of financial text. If you want to create synthetic voices, you need hours of audio recordings. And therein lies the nightmare. Real-world data is incredibly hard to get. It's expensive to collect, it's time-consuming to label, and worst of all, it's legally dangerous. Medical data is protected by HIPAA. One violation could mean hundreds of thousands in fines, or even criminal charges. Financial data, covered by strict regulations like GDPR in Europe and CCPA in California. Use someone's personal financial information without proper consent, and you're looking at massive penalties. Customer data, user conversations, private communications, all of it is protected by privacy laws that are getting stricter every year. And even publicly available data isn't safe anymore. Just because something is on the internet doesn't mean you can use it to train AI. Copyright law still applies. Publishers and content creators are realizing their work is being used to train models, and they're not happy about it. The lawsuits aren't theoretical anymore. They're happening right now. OpenAI is facing multiple lawsuits over using copyrighted books and articles without permission. Stability AI is being sued for training on copyrighted images. Microsoft, GitHub, and OpenAI are being sued over using code from public repositories to train Copilot. And these aren't small claims. We're talking billions of dollars in potential damages. So if you're a startup trying to train an AI model, you're stuck. You need data to build your product. But getting that data legally is either impossibly expensive or straight up impossible. This is where synthetic data changes everything. So what exactly is synthetic data? Simply put, synthetic data is artificially generated data that mimics the statistical properties of real data without actually being real data. Think of it like this. Imagine you need 1,000 photos of cars to train a computer vision model. Instead of going out and taking real photos or scraping the internet and risking copyright issues, you use AI to generate completely artificial images of cars that look realistic, but don't actually depict any real vehicle that exists. Or say you need medical records to train a diagnostic AI. Instead of using real patient data, which would violate HIPAA and patient privacy, you generate synthetic patient records that have the same statistical patterns, the same types of conditions, the same demographic distributions, but don't correspond to any actual person. The synthetic data looks real. It acts like real data statistically, but it's not real. It's artificially created. And that's the magic, because it doesn't come from real people or real copyrighted sources. You can potentially sidestep a massive amount of legal risk. But, and this is crucial, synthetic data isn't a magic legal shield that makes all your problems disappear. There are right ways and wrong ways to use it. And if you get it wrong, you can still end up in serious legal trouble. So let's break down exactly when synthetic data is safe and when it's risky. Let's start with when synthetic data is legally safe and strategically smart. Scenario 1. You're generating completely novel data from scratch. This is the cleanest use case. You're using generative AI models to create entirely new data that doesn't derive from any specific copyrighted source. For example, using AI to generate fictional customer profiles for testing your app, creating synthetic transaction data for training a fraud detection model, generating artificial medical images using models trained on properly licensed or public domain data. As long as the generative model you're using was trained legally, the synthetic data it produces is yours to use. You're not copying anyone's work. You're not violating anyone's privacy. You're creating something new. This is the gold standard of synthetic data usage. Scenario 2. You're augmenting limited real data you own or have licensed. Let's say you run a small medical clinic and you have a few hundred patient scans that you legally own. That's not enough data to train a good AI model. But you can use those scans to generate thousands of synthetic variations, different lighting, different angles, different artifacts that might appear in real scans. You're not using anyone else's data. You're expanding your own data set synthetically. This is generally safe as long as you have the rights to the original data you're working from. Scenario 3. You're using synthetic data to protect privacy. This is huge for industries dealing with sensitive information. Instead of using real customer data, real patient data, or real financial data, you generate synthetic versions that preserve statistical patterns but remove all personally identifiable information. This is actually encouraged by privacy regulations in many cases. GDPR explicitly mentions synthetic data as a privacy-enhancing technology. If a hospital wants to share data with researchers but can't due to privacy laws, they can generate synthetic patient data that researchers can use freely. The research insights remain valid, but no actual patient's privacy is compromised. These are the clean, legally safe ways to use synthetic data. Now let's talk about when synthetic data gets you into trouble. Red flag number 1. Laundering copyrighted data through synthetic generation. Here's a trick some people think is clever, but is actually legal suicide. Taking copyrighted content, using it to train a generative model, then claiming the synthetic outputs aren't copyrighted because they're new. This doesn't work. Courts aren't stupid. If you scrape 1 million copyrighted images, train a model on them, then generate new images from that model, you're still deriving your work from copyrighted sources. The fact that you added a synthetic generation step doesn't magically erase copyright. This is exactly what some of the current lawsuits are about. The argument isn't whether the output is technically new. The argument is whether training on copyrighted material without permission is legal in the first place. Don't try to use synthetic data as a copyright laundering scheme. It won't protect you. Red flag number 2. Synthetic data that can be traced back to real individuals. Just because data is synthetic doesn't mean it's automatically privacy safe. If your synthetic data generation process can be reverse engineered to reveal information about real people in your training set, you've got a problem. This is called membership inference, the ability to determine whether specific real data was used in training. If someone can prove that your supposedly synthetic patient data reveals information about actual patients, you're liable under privacy laws. But synthetic data generation includes techniques to prevent this, like differential privacy. But if you're just naively generating synthetic data without considering these risks, you could still be violating privacy laws. Red flag number 3. Synthetic data that perpetuates illegal biases. If your synthetic data is generated from biased real data, and that synthetic data perpetuates discriminatory patterns, you can still be liable under anti-discrimination laws. For example, if you train a hiring AI on synthetic resumes generated from biased real-world hiring data, and your AI discriminates against protected classes, but it was synthetic data, isn't a legal defense. You're still responsible for the outcomes of your AI, regardless of whether the training data was real or synthetic. Let me give you a real-world example of how this works in practice. There's a healthcare AI company called Syntegra that specializes in generating synthetic patient data for medical research and AI development. Here's their process. They work with hospitals that have real patient data. Using advanced techniques like generative adversarial networks and differential privacy, they create synthetic patient records that maintain the statistical relationships and clinical patterns of the real data, but cannot be traced back to any individual patient. Researchers and AI developers can then use this synthetic data to train diagnostic models, test algorithms, and develop new medical AI without ever touching real patient information. This has been a game changer for medical AI development. HIPAA compliance is incredibly strict. One violation can destroy a company. But with properly generated synthetic data, researchers can work freely without that risk. Syntegra has worked with major hospital systems, pharmaceutical companies, and government agencies. Their synthetic data has been validated to ensure it maintains clinical accuracy while guaranteeing patient privacy. This is synthetic data done right. They're not trying to dodge copyright or launder data. They're using cutting-edge techniques to solve a real legal and ethical problem. How do you enable medical AI research while protecting patient privacy? The result? Healthcare AI companies that would normally need years of regulatory approval to access real patient data can start building and testing immediately with synthetic data. That's the power of using synthetic data correctly. Now let's talk about the practical side. How do you actually generate synthetic data for your own projects? There are several approaches depending on what kind of data you need. For structured data, things like customer profiles, transaction records, sensor data, you can use tools like SDV from MIT, Gretel.ai, or Mostly AI. These platforms let you input a schema and generate synthetic datasets that match the statistical properties you need. For example, if you're building a fraud detection system and need thousands of synthetic transaction records, you can define the parameters transaction amounts, merchant types, user behaviors, and generate a dataset that looks realistic without using any real customer data. For images and visual data, you can use generative models like Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, or Mid-Journey if you need general images. For more specialized use cases, you might need to train your own generative model on properly licensed data. The key is making sure your generative model itself was trained ethically and legally. Don't use a model that was trained on scraped, copyrighted images to generate synthetic data for commercial use. You're inheriting the legal risk of that training data. For text data, models like GPT-4 can generate synthetic text data for various purposes: synthetic customer reviews, synthetic support tickets, synthetic documentation. Again, the key is ensuring your use case doesn't violate the terms of service, and that you're not. Generating synthetic data from copyrighted sources. For audio and video, tools like Synthesia for video and 11 Labs for voice can generate synthetic media. But be very careful here. Deepfakes and synthetic media have additional legal considerations around misrepresentation and consent. The technical side isn't the hard part anymore. The tools exist. The hard part is understanding the legal boundaries and using these tools responsibly. So let's talk strategy. How do you build synthetic data into your AI business the right way? Step 1. Audit your data sources. Before you generate anything, understand where your seed data is coming from. If you're training a generative model, what data is it learning from? Do you have the legal right to use that data? Is it licensed properly? Is it public domain? Don't assume something is fair game just because it's on the internet. Get legal clarity first. Step 2. Implement privacy-preserving techniques. If you're working with any real data to generate synthetic versions, use differential privacy, k-anonymity, or other privacy-preserving techniques. Don't just generate synthetic data and hope it's private. Verify it. There are tools and frameworks that can help you measure the privacy guarantees of your synthetic data. Use them. Step 3. Document everything. Keep records of how your synthetic data was generated, what sources were used, what privacy techniques were applied, and what validation was performed. If you ever face legal questions, documentation is your defense. Courts and regulators want to see that you took reasonable steps to comply with the law. Good documentation proves you weren't reckless. Step 4. Get legal review for high-risk applications. If you're building AI for healthcare, finance, legal services, or other regulated industries, don't wing it. Get an attorney who understands AI and data privacy to review your synthetic data approach. The cost of a legal consultation is nothing compared to the cost of a lawsuit or regulatory penalty. Step 5. Stay updated on regulations. AI law is evolving rapidly. What's legally unclear today might be clearly defined next year. The EU's AI Act, California's privacy laws, and federal regulations are all in flux. Make it a practice to stay informed about legal developments in AI and data privacy. Join industry groups, follow legal experts in the space, and be prepared to adjust your practices as the law evolves. Here's something important to understand. Synthetic data isn't about cheating the system. It's about building responsibly. The companies that will win in AI aren't the ones that scrape data recklessly and hope they don't get caught, the ones that build on solid legal and ethical foundations from the start. Synthetic data, used properly, gives you that foundation. It lets you train powerful AI without exploiting people's privacy. It lets you innovate without violating copyright. It lets you move fast without exposing yourself to catastrophic legal risk. But it only works if you use it correctly. The AI industry is at a crossroads right now. We're figuring out what the rules are. Courts are deciding. Regulators are writing new laws. And the companies that are proactive about building responsibly will have an enormous advantage over those that take shortcuts. Because here's the reality, the lawsuits we're seeing now are just the beginning. As AI becomes more valuable, the legal scrutiny will only intensify. The data you use today could become a liability tomorrow. But if you build with synthetic data the right way, you're not just protecting yourself legally, you're also building better AI. Synthetic data can be more diverse, more balanced, and more carefully controlled than real-world data. You can generate edge cases that rarely appear in real data. You can ensure your training set isn't biased. You can create exactly the data you need instead of settling for whatever you can scrape. That's a competitive advantage on top of the legal protection. So let me bring this all together. Synthetic data is one of the most powerful tools in AI development right now. It lets you train models without compromising privacy, without violating copyright, and without exposing yourself to legal risk. But it's not a magic bullet that makes all legal concerns disappear. You need to use it correctly. Generate synthetic data from sources you have the right to use. You implement privacy-preserving techniques when working with sensitive information. Don't try to use synthetic generation to launder copyrighted content. Document your processes. Get legal review for high-risk applications. Stay updated on the evolving legal landscape. Do it right, and synthetic data gives you freedom to innovate without fear. Do it wrong, and it won't protect you from the lawsuits that are coming. The AI gold rush is happening right now. But the prospectors who strike it rich won't be the ones who grab whatever data they can find. They'll be the ones who build on solid ground. That's where synthetic data comes in. If this video opened your eyes to the legal minefield in AI and how to navigate it safely, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel is dedicated to giving you the real, practical information you need to build AI businesses that last, not just startups that get shut down by lawsuits. And drop a like on this video to help more entrepreneurs discover this information before they make expensive legal mistakes. The algorithm rewards engagement, and every like helps spread this message to people who need to hear it. Build smart, build legally, and leverage synthetic data the right way. See you in the next one.